In the roaring 1920s, Henry Ford was an absolute god of industry. His legendary Model T owned over 60% of the entire global automotive market. It was a flawless machine built to last forever, costing a fraction of its competitors' prices, and famously manufactured only in black. Ford's monopoly seemed entirely unbreakable. But by the mid-1930s, an aggressive underdog named Chevrolet completely dethroned the industrial king, leaving Ford's empire bleeding on the floor. How did a younger brand crush the pioneer of the moving assembly line? They didn't build a faster engine. Instead, Chevrolet weaponized human psychology to execute the most brutal corporate coup in American history. Henry Ford operated on a fundamental, unyielding engineering philosophy. Built an eternal car that never needs replacement. He believed that once a consumer owned a reliable vehicle, they would never want another one. But a brilliant corporate strategist named Alfred Sloan, the mastermind behind Chevrolet's parent company General Motors, spotted a fatal flaw in Ford's logic. Sloan understood a profound truth about human nature. The modern consumer doesn't just want utility. The modern consumer gets bored, craves social status, and desperately wants to show off. Chevrolet realized they could conquer the entire market by hacking the human ego. The battle began in 1911 when legendary racing driver Louis Chevrolet and ousted General Motors founder William Durant joined forces to launch a new brand. From the very beginning, Chevrolet was an underdog, scratching for survival against Ford's mass production juggernaut. They initially struggled with identity, floating between luxury concepts and affordable engineering. But when Alfred Sloan took complete control of General Motors in 1923, he designated Chevrolet as the corporation's primary frontline soldier. Its sole mission was to launch a direct, highly calculated psychological assault against the invincible Ford Model T. Sloan and Chevrolet unleashed their first psychological superweapon, the annual model change. This single concept completely altered the fabric of modern consumer capitalism. Instead of selling the exact same car year after year like Henry Ford, Chevrolet deliberately redesigned the exterior body, the grille, and the fenders every 12 months. Mechanically, the vehicle remained almost identical under the hood, but visually, it looked completely different. If you were driving last year's Chevrolet model, your entire neighborhood instantly knew it. Chevrolet successfully transformed a mechanical tool into a rolling declaration of your personal financial success. Henry Ford famously stated that a customer could have a Model T in any color they wanted, as long as it was black. Black paint dried the fastest on his automated assembly lines, keeping production cheap and hyper-efficient. Chevrolet saw this rigid engineering obsession as an absolute golden marketing opportunity. They dropped a literal color bomb on the industry, offering their vehicles in a dazzling array of vibrant blues, deep reds, and forest greens. They turned the American highway from a monochrome funeral procession into a colorful fashion runway, making Ford's black cars look like ancient relics. The psychological warfare was devastatingly effective. Chevrolet's aggressive advertising campaigns subtly shamed anyone driving an outdated automobile. They didn't pitch horsepower or engine durability. They pitched envy and modern lifestyle. If your car lacked the latest design accents, you were socially obsolete, projecting an image of stagnation to your employers and peers. Henry Ford watched in absolute disbelief as millions of Americans willingly abandoned his superior, ultra-durable engineering simply because they wanted a prettier dashboard and a fresh coat of blue paint. The era of the emotional purchase had arrived. But Chevrolet's most brilliant and sinister coup wasn't visual. It was purely financial. In 1919, General Motors established the General Motors Acceptance Corporation, or GMAC. It was a dedicated multi-million-dollar financing division designed to sell cars on credit. At the time, Henry Ford held a deep, puritanical hatred for consumer debt, refusing to offer loans and demanding that buyers pay full cash upfront for his vehicles. Chevrolet bypassed this barrier entirely, allowing the American middle class to drive away in a brand new colorful car for just a tiny down payment. This credit strategy completely broke the laws of traditional retail economics. Chevrolet discovered a profound corporate secret. The real money wasn't in selling the metal, it was in selling the debt. By letting consumers pay off their vehicles in small monthly installments over several years, Chevrolet made their more expensive cars feel significantly cheaper than Ford's cash-only Model T. They completely engineered the modern American credit culture, manipulating consumer psychology to make people happily spend money they hadn't even earned yet, just to sustain the illusion of wealth. By 1927, Henry Ford's stubborn refusal to adapt completely fractured his empire. Sales of the ancient Model T cratered so catastrophically that Ford was forced to shut down his entire manufacturing apparatus for 6 months just to retool for a brand new model. It was too late. Chevrolet aggressively stepped into the vacuum, capturing millions of loyal customers and permanently locking down the #1 sales position in America. By the mid-1930s, Chevrolet was the undisputed monarch of the automotive landscape, proving that marketing psychology could decisively defeat the greatest manufacturing machine on earth. For the next 4 decades, Chevrolet enjoyed an unprecedented golden era of absolute cultural dominance. Phrases like, "See the USA in your Chevrolet," became national anthems. But as the profits rolled in by the billions, the exact same corporate disease that destroyed Henry Ford began to slowly rot General Motors from the inside out. The boardroom turned deeply arrogant, hyper-focused on quarterly financial engineering and aggressive marketing metrics. They became so completely addicted to selling cosmetic redesigns and easy financing loops that they forgot how to build an actual high-quality machine. General Motors became a bloated, hyper-bureaucratic empire where accountants held absolute veto power over automotive engineers. To maximize profit margins for Wall Street, the company began aggressively cutting corners on raw materials, structural safety, and basic mechanical quality. They utilized cheap plastics, engineered fragile transmissions, and completely ignored fuel efficiency. Chevrolet relied entirely on the absolute belief that the American consumer would continue buying their vehicles out of pure cultural nostalgia and heavy brand loyalty, completely ignoring the massive industrial storm brewing across the Pacific Ocean. In the 1970s, the global economy was hit by a massive, devastating oil crisis. Fuel prices skyrocketed overnight, and the American consumer suddenly woke up from their styling-induced slumber. They didn't care about annual body revisions or flashing chrome tail fins anymore. They desperately needed reliable, fuel-efficient transportation. Enter Japanese competitors like Toyota and Honda. These foreign manufacturers didn't play the planned obsolescence game. They produced hyper-efficient, incredibly reliable, and low-cost compact cars that ran for decades without a single mechanical breakdown. Chevrolet's empire began to bleed customers at an apocalyptic rate. Instead of completely rebuilding their broken engineering standards to fight the Japanese invasion, Chevrolet and GM doubled down on their financial tricks. They used their massive financing arm to mask their declining hardware sales, offering 0% interest loans and subprime auto financing to keep production lines moving. They transformed themselves into a giant, high-risk predatory bank, that happened to manufacture cars on the side. They were running a beautiful multi-billion-dollar corporate illusion, artificially propping up their stock price, while their real product quality continued to decay into absolute trash. In 2008, the global financial matrix completely collapsed. The subprime mortgage crisis triggered an absolute credit freeze across the planet, instantly destroying the banking sector. Because General Motors had spent decades operating as a financial house disguised as a car company, their entire house of cards collapsed within a matter of weeks. Consumers couldn't secure auto loans. Their financing divisions lost billions overnight, and the company completely ran out of cash reserves. The illusion was permanently over, exposing a hollowed-out corporate shell completely incapable of surviving on its own merits. June 2009 brought the definitive, historic humiliation. General Motors officially declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy. The proud symbol of American industrial capitalism was entirely broke. To prevent a catastrophic economic collapse that would destroy millions of jobs, the United States government was forced to step in with an unprecedented $50 billion taxpayer bailout. Washington took complete corporate ownership of the company. A dark, historic era mockingly labeled Obama's Motors, the titan that once used psychological warfare to destroy Henry Ford, had to be saved by the hard-earned tax dollars of ordinary citizens. Today, Chevrolet has managed to slowly rebuild itself from the ashes of liquidation. They survived by aggressively slashing their bloated brand catalog, restructuring their labor unions, and pivoting toward advanced electric trucks and utility platforms. But the untouchable, multi-billion-dollar arrogance of the 20th century is permanently dead. The historic ruins of abandoned Detroit factories stand as a silent, physical monument to an era when styling and financial engineering completely replaced authentic craftsmanship. Chevrolet remains a functional brand, but its crown is forever tarnished. The epic saga of Chevrolet and Henry Ford has become the ultimate case study on the fragile nature of brand positioning. It perfectly illustrates the dangerous paradox of the illusion. If you build your entire corporate empire solely on marketing psychology, credit manipulation, and cosmetic status shifts, your business is inherently volatile. Human desire can be manipulated for a few decades, but eventually the market will always return to the cold, hard reality of actual product value, efficiency, and engineering quality. The illusion always shatters. Henry Ford's fatal flaw was believing that utility was everything and that human emotion didn't matter. Chevrolet's fatal flaw was believing that human emotion was everything and that product engineering utility could be completely ignored. Both extremes lead to absolute corporate ruin. True, permanent business dominance requires a delicate, flawless balance between cold, rational, functional performance and the messy, emotional desires of the consumer mind. If you sacrifice the soul of your product to please the metrics of Wall Street, you are writing your own suicide note. The incredible story of Chevrolet is the ultimate cautionary tale for every single entrepreneur and CEO on earth. It proves that no matter how massive your bank account is, you are never too big to fail. True innovation isn't just about making your marketing campaign 10% flashier or engineering complex consumer debt loops. It's about possessing the absolute, radical courage to maintain peak engineering quality while adapting to changing global landscapes. In business, the most dangerous place to sit is right at the top, because that's exactly when you stop looking at the horizon. Adapt or perish. The choice is always yours. They completely mastered the art of psychological manipulation to conquer the highway, only to get completely crushed by the raw reality of engineering quality. Subscribe for more business stories.